The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to A Kid's Life, or is it? Regional Town Hall Special, as part of KSMQ's Cities on the Move series. Tonight we're talking about how busy our families have become. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Stay tuned for an entertaining discussion coming up on Cities on the Move. Tonight we'll be discussing the schedules of the young people in our families. It seems like today our kids are just as busy, if not busier, than the adults in the family. Please welcome our special guests. Alex Knoll, Austin High School student. Jim Anastasi, Anastasi Counseling Services. Dr. Heather Von Bank, Minnesota State University, Mankato. Robin Sainer, Rochester Public Schools. Dr. Dale Blythe, University of Minnesota Extension Center for Youth Development. And Dan Ryan, Family Service Rochester. Thank you all for being here. We'd also like to welcome members of our at-home audience to join us anytime by making a comment or asking a question either by phone or email. The phone number is 1-877-469-5767 or ask@ksmq.org. We're going to open our discussion this evening with a brief introduction. Let's take a look.
Schedules that begin at 6:30 a.m. and end late at night are not uncommon for adults in today's society. Jobs are demanding, and coupled with caring for families, days become filled quickly. A more recent development is the mirror image of those schedules for children. Up early for morning sports practices, a full day of school, and shuffling from one after-school activity to another, children are experiencing an increase in the number of activities and the time required to complete them. Is the rigorous competition for higher education driving this change? Do two-parent working families simply need somewhere to park their kids while they pursue their busy schedules? Are our neighborhoods no longer safe enough to allow children to run about and just play? What are some of the changes in our culture that have created this pattern of packed schedules for our children?
It does seem like our families are so much busier these days, and there probably are a lot of factors. Why is it that we're so busy? Jim, can you take a stab at that one for us to start?
I think there are many reasons. One of the reasons that families are busy and parents are busy and they don't want to leave their kids home alone. And so if they have an evening schedule, they want to keep their kids busy. They may be working shift work and they want their kids to be active during the weekends. So I think the parents often have an urge to keep their kids occupied and also supervised. I think that safety becomes an issue. They don't want their kids home alone or walking on the streets alone.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that, and I think the introduction video hit it right on the head there, because the two-parent working families, the moms are working, which may not have been as prominent 30 years ago, and they really feel kind of pressured to keep the kids busy too. And there's lots of opportunities for involvement, and it's a lot easier to get there, because I know from my experience, I have two little brothers. And once I got my driver's license, I noticed there was a big jump in the amount of things I needed to drive them to. So
You got put to work, didn't you?
yes, I certainly did.
Well, and it's true. Back in, I think in 1976, they said 33% of families had two-parent working households, and today it's anywhere from 75 to 80%, depending on where you live. And Professor Blythe, you mentioned that's perhaps even higher in Minnesota because of the number of working women.
Yes, Minnesota is one of the highest percentages of working women in the country. I think the number of these kind of trends that we're talking about combine to mean that we have children and youth have more time outside of the home or outside of the neighborhood than they used to. And parents have to get them to all those places in some fashion, so that adds another burden to the family. I mean, the trends in both parents working, the trends in technology and being available 24/7 now, the increased use of the media, both in terms of gaming for young people and television, and not for adults and young people, And there's also less separation of roles, so that you're never quite off work and never quite totally in the family any longer. And so all that mixing adds to another sense of busyness, even if it's not literally different than it was before. It feels very different.
There's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think people don't want to miss it, and they want to expose their kids to as many choices as they have. The difficulty is there's a lot of good choices, so it's not always easy to limit what that is. And so I think that adds to the stress. So we have too many irons in the fire sometimes, especially for younger families, where of course there's a little more togetherness in younger families, and hopefully some of that activities are more family-based, backyard play kind of things, and of course as the teens get in the teen years, and I think there's a little more separation, more independence, and then it becomes a lot more outside the home. And so I think, and it depends in part what stage the family life is at.
Well, and I think from a parent perspective, I have 3 kids, and they're almost being recruited for things. The opportunities out there were not out there when I was their age. I could be a Girl Scout. Maybe there was a stamp club at school or something after school, but the things, they're sent home with flyers from school frequently, and they want to do it all. So I think some parents have to just say no. And also neighborhoods don't exist the way, houses are getting bigger lots, and your kids' friends don't live around the block, but they live 4 miles away, and they go to the same school because we've combined schools, and schools are getting bigger. So I think there's a lot of things that play into that. But the opportunities are there for kids to do a million different things too right now.
Yeah, it's important to note that opportunities are there in abundance in some places, but not all places. I mean, the one thing I'd have to say in this whole conversation, it's important to remember that the bigger problem we have with young people is not over-engagement, it's under-engagement. Only about 6% of young people by national studies tend to suggest that they are over-involved at high levels, 20 hours more a week kind of thing. The bigger problem is that young people are not engaged. They're watching television, gaming, they're keeping themselves occupied, but they're not engaged in what might be described as youth development opportunities or constructive programs of one type. So you have sort of different problems for different subgroups, and it's important not to sort of say everybody's overscheduled or there's an abundance of opportunities for everybody, because in fact in Minnesota there's a real opportunity gap. The recent survey showed that parents in many cases find it very hard to find high quality, affordable opportunities for their kids.
Well, I think that this whole sense of information overload that we've gotten in this new 21st century, and Facebook, cell phones, I think that can help create the illusion of overscheduling, because you're always in contact with your friends and your family, and even when you are busy, cell phones, well, your mom can call you, I can't be home for dinner, can you pick up Burger King for the kids? Well, that wasn't as easy to do 30 years ago, back before cell phones existed.
I think it's not just the kids that are busy, as you mentioned earlier, it's the family. The family is extremely busy, and there's a lot of stress. I think some of the activities that we want kids to get involved in actually are for the parents, to give the parents a break. The kids can go to the Y for the evening, or they have a camp that they're going to go to, or we're going to get them involved in piano lessons, but that gives me an hour-and-a-half break where I can do my own thing. I know with my own children in Chicago, when they take their daughters to dance classes, I think they really like to take them there because that gives them an hour-and-a-half break from all the other responsibilities, both ways. The one at home gets a break, and the one at the dance lesson gets a break.
And let's talk a little bit about, there is some discussion of is it really true? Or do we just feel overscheduled, or are our young people truly overscheduled? Time Magazine did an article and said it's a myth. It doesn't exist. Professor Blythe, maybe you can lead us down that road a little bit further and talk about perhaps the regional disparities. Folks here are representing kind of our viewing region, and you get to see a bigger picture sometimes at the University of Minnesota and see that 4-H system statewide. Help us perhaps see what may be taking place in our region as opposed to other areas.
Well, the data we have on families' perspectives on out-of-school time, particularly for older youth, actually says there were relatively few regional differences except for the metro area. And what young people and parents want from opportunities is fairly common. Youth want fun a little bit more than parents do, and parents want things that teach the value of hard work a little more than youth do. But basically, other than those differences, they're fairly similar. And the busyness is a function of more middle class and upper class families who have lots of opportunities, who are often upwardly mobile themselves and or wanting their children to be upwardly mobile, getting better jobs, better education and things. And so that adds another level of it. So I think it's more of a perception of busyness than just a reality for most people. But for those for whom it's a problem, it's very real. I mean, I don't wish to minimize that for the 6 or whatever percentage of people who are really overscheduled. It's a very real problem. And for a large number of families, it's probably feels a bit overwhelming in terms of things.
And for those that it's very real for, I believe it's they're very competitive families. They're families that are competing not only within their own family system, brother against brother sometimes, but also family against family. And it's we're a very competitive society, which I think is probably a cultural change that we've seen over the years.
And that's one of the things that the data is showing is that the kids who get very, very busy, 20 hours more a week, generally don't get negative effects from it unless there's also parenting issues. So when parents put a lot of pressure on, when there's a lot of good communications and the kid's really busy, then you get the downside of the overbusy. Otherwise, generally speaking, you can get fairly busy without getting negative developmental effects.
You bring up a good point in terms of the pressure that parents feel wanting to do a good job with their kids. You know, some of the books that talk about just relax a little bit. Heather, I'm going to turn to you. You are a brand new mom. And when you think about the future of your child and the work that you do in family consumer science over there at Minnesota State University, do you feel and do you see in the work that you do the pressure to have everything go smoothly and to give your child every advantage? I mean, it's kind of a natural instinct, isn't it?
I think it is a natural instinct, and I think when we think about the overscheduled child, I wonder if we're talking about the overscheduled teenager, because I think there's just a lot more opportunities for teenagers, and especially with what you were talking about as far as kids versus the urban versus rural area, the haves and the have-nots. You definitely see that disparity as far as what they're able and allowed to do with the finances that they have. I guess my concern is whether children are having a chance to just play on their own. So developmentally, I think that children as young as 3, 4 who are involved in soccer and Little League and Pee-wee football, and we have to have them in all these different things. He has to try them all out. Well, why does he have to try them all out in such a scheduled way? Why not play these different games with your child and figure out together whether this is something that they think is engaging? That's kind of my idea for how I want to raise our son, but does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because hearing this from a parent perspective and living in Rochester, which does have a disparity in socioeconomic groups and a lot of difference. But if you want to be on the hockey team, you start your kid at age 4 on ice skates. And those kids by 5th grade are at 5:30 in the morning practices. So my kids don't play hockey. But it does become, it's really hard because one of the things parents are having to learn to say, who do have some resources that maybe they didn't have growing up, is you have to say no. And we didn't have resources, and there wasn't a lot out there, so we didn't do a lot when I was a kid. But now that's out there, and we could afford some of those things, but they can't do them all. And I think it's hard for some parents, because they have the resource, to say, no, you can't do soccer and ballet. And 20 hours a week, I think, okay, that's outrageous for a child. But I have 3 children, and 4 hours a week is outrageous for our family if they each had 4 hours going. Because they're not the same 4 hours. if your kids are involved, it's not like this one has this, this lesson then. And
there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier how you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and how you didn't have the opportunities that you do nowadays, and you're living in Rochester, which is a fraction of the size of the metro of Chicago, and it kind of illustrates that it doesn't necessarily mean it's not totally reliant on the size of the city or area that you're growing up. It really is a sign of the times and how we're changing.
It's important to, one of the things that's sort of counterintuitive is that as things get larger, like cities or schools, the number of opportunities go up. but the opportunities per kid go down.
Exactly.
So that there's actually more pressure to be involved in smaller schools and smaller communities. That's generally a healthy pressure to be involved, because we need that extra person for the football team or the thing, because we don't have a team if we don't have those pressures on that are typical of smaller communities and smaller schools are actually good pressures on development, because it tends to get you involved, and it doesn't tend to say you have to be exceptional. You have to start hockey at age 4. You won't make it because it's such a competitive thing. The other thing I would say is that one of the things I think that is problematic today is that we have over-demanding activities and demanding too much too soon from young people. Sports is the classic example where you've got to commit when you're very young if you're going to do sports. And it's not true. And if it is true, it shouldn't be true.
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have the backyard soccer coach from dad or mom. We delegate that responsibility to somebody who's more capable of coaching that sport, because we want our kid to be really proficient. And I'm not good at that, so he's got to be with the guy or the gal that knows more about that sport or that activity.
And that's where it can become at the expense of family, because it's
Exactly.
more about getting your kids out there being successful, but that doesn't necessarily mean having better relationships, because even out there with their peers, that they're sometimes competing with their peers, as opposed to ideally it's about improving their ability to interact and be a team member and things like that, instead of the pressure to compete or be better than.
With the families I work with, I often ask kids, what's your most important responsibility? And many times they'll come back and say, well, to keep mom and dad happy, or to do well in school, or to be a good football player or basketball player. And I often say that your number one job in life is to learn to enjoy the gift of life. And I think that sometimes we forget to enjoy the activities. The activity becomes a job. The activity becomes something I have to perform at, and I'm being judged and valued.
Right.
And my significance is based upon that.
Great point. I want the two of you to kind of give opposing viewpoints, or not opposing, but the way you see it, because you help advise kids when they're looking at college. And Alex, you are starting to look at college, and you visited some campuses. Do you feel the pressure to present a resume or an application to a college that is chock full? And is that what counselors are telling you from admissions counselors?
Yeah, I am in the National Honor Society at the school, and that's kind of an elite organization where you have to have certain academic credentials to be in it, and you have to do a minimum of 10 volunteer hours per semester, which for an already busy schedule, that's asking quite a bit. But yeah, I would say that one of my main reasons for doing that is going to college and putting that on my resume. And I mean, I wanted to be in the organization, but yes, colleges do look at that, and I try and make myself well-rounded, being involved in sports, but also doing the musics and the arts and academics. So,
is there a perfect resume these kids have to put forth to get into their college of choice?
You know, some of the things Alex is talking about are really true. They're wanting more service than I've seen in past years. Colleges are looking for some service. They're looking more for the commitment than the lots of different stuff. They want to know that you can do something and stick with it. But they also want a little bit of well-rounded. They don't want only sports or only music. They want to see that you've tried something else besides that. But the service is getting bigger, and a lot more is starting to write on those essays. I think we kind of went the other way, and I think it's coming back. So kids like Alex are thinking, oh, how do I get all this and make it look good and sound good?
Yeah, I know I have a couple of my friends already starting on a Common App. And they're always talking about how much they dread writing the essays, and how, oh, I think I did a good job in that essay. And I haven't gotten started on mine yet, but I know when it comes to writing those essays,
writing those essays are a really good part about detailing your life experiences, right? So what is it that you've learned in your 18 years that you can write an essay about? Well, you're going to pull it from your experiences. Well, you're going to talk about your time on the football team. Well, you might talk about that, but you're going to talk about more than just that. You're going to talk about the decision making that you had to do, and the leadership of the skills that you took. And a lot of those things can be gained from things that aren't just structured activities. You know, being an older brother, you have a lot of responsibility, right? So a lot of these things that go into making our lives so structured can help, obviously, write the essay, but it's all of those experiences from those activities too.
And it's the genuineness, the sincerity. Put this on it.
Make sure you get that out there. All right.
Well, I mean,
there certainly are a number of factors influencing the frequency and types of activities on our calendars and our kids' calendars. But let's talk next about, is it good or bad? And let's start by taking a quick look at this tape.
Developing leadership skills, learning to manage time, making friends, and developing social skills. These are all positive attributes we hope our children will acquire. Developing insomnia or experiencing stress-induced stomach aches due to excessive demands are not what we wish for our children. Involvement in activities can produce both positive and negative consequences. Are there also benefits to an ample amount of free time, or does unstructured time simply lead to troublemaking or sedentary boredom?
Professor Bly?
One of the points I want to make on the college thing is that particularly competitive colleges where they have a large pool to select from, differences in academic ability are not very different. I mean, they get high levels of students with straight A's, high SAT or ACT scores and stuff. So they're looking for things that round out the student, what makes them more well-rounded, what are they learning from life in the way you were talking about. Those are the things to do it. And so the extent to which young people are engaged in opportunities and learning more broadly from those opportunities is very important. And that goes to what the segment was just talking about, is what do we get from these kind of opportunities, and why is it important for young people to do it? I've increasingly come to the conclusion that extracurricular after-school program things are no longer just nice. They're actually necessary for development, not because you can't do it at home if you were at home and you can do it a number of ways, but in general we don't have the time as parents, or don't take the time as parents to do all the things we could do. Just like you can homeschool, but we need public schools because we can't all homeschool. Similarly, I would argue our communities need to have these kind of opportunities, because the benefits, the research is increasingly showing, the benefits of kids being in these opportunities, being significantly engaged in their own learning in these activities, helps them socio-emotionally, it helps them developmentally, it helps their learning, they do better in school, they do better on achievement tests, a variety of things. So one of the fundamental messages are that these opportunities are very important developmentally for young people, and they're not just nice things that you can have if you want and don't need to have.
And certainly from this group, I'm going to get the sense that you can't paint everything all good or all bad. There are lots of variables here, but let's talk a little bit about some of the specifics of what children can gain by the various activities that they participate in, and love your thoughts on whether it's group dynamics or individual private lessons. You are a piano aficionado, so give us a sense of what are the specific skills that kids can benefit from, and then we'll take the flip side, and I want to hear from you, what are some things that maybe are not so good about a very busy schedule?
Well, I think the basic skills gained, like maybe playing piano or being a good baseball player, those are obviously gained from doing these extracurriculars, but also you're given a broad view of what you can do in your life. So if you are a member of the National Honor Society and you find out you really like volunteering, if you're in a trying to think, like a mechanical club, and you like cars a lot, well, that'll give you an opportunity to see, well, maybe I want to be a mechanic, or maybe I want to go into engineering. So it can really kind of help you decide what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Okay, we'll discover.
I think all of these activities involve involvement with others. And so whether it's a private lesson in piano, you're working directly with a coach. And that helps you perhaps develop the skills of working directly with a supervisor at work somewhere. Team play obviously has a lot of benefits, and how to give and take, and you win and lose as a team. And the support of and the camaraderie of that group. I think there's so many advantages that perhaps just family can't provide, but family can dovetail with that. Family also is a team, and they too can work together. And but I think it's wise to expand beyond just that one team, but there's many different teams.
I think it's good to have also at least opportunities maybe for some individual interests that don't necessarily involve a team. The ideal thing is to be able to have both. And just same thing with I call leisure skills, where some things are, you're not necessarily doing something to achieve or accomplish or win, or you're just doing it because you enjoy doing it. And sometimes I get the idea that the activities are about organized, structured, competitive kind of things, and that has a role too. But I think, because as you talked about earlier, you know, it's about enjoying your life. Part of that is leisure skills,
So we don't have heart attacks at 50, right?
that, and not everything is a competition, and there's the more cooperative play versus competitive play, and sometimes to do things just out of your individually an individual interest, whether that could be playing an instrument or something by yourself, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a team sport. But I think, you know, having a balance there can
Interesting
be a good thing.
health implications, really, though.
With all the, excuse me, with all the high-tech activities, I think that we're so stimulated, and we always have some stimulation. And even when we're relaxing, we're texting, or we have some activity. And I so agree with that. It'd be nice to be able to have that moment where we can do nothing, and that's okay. And that's maybe that could be scheduled somehow.
Yeah, or you're reading something because you enjoy it, not because you have to have a report on it or something.
I'm going to be tested on it.
Well, and I think, you know, we're talking about the activities and what we get from one thing kids learn is perseverance. Sometimes self-advocacy. I really want to do this, and negotiating with mom and dad on how they can get to do it or figuring out how to do it. And also, one thing that's really important that I see kids learning is how to accept disappointment. When they can't play that piece and have to keep doing it over and over again, or when they can't, in that game their team loses. And that it's okay. I mean, that's just a life skill that we all need to learn. And with the right supportive environment, that's the perfect way to have it, and then go home and have, you know, be able to process it further. So.
Some of the things we're talking about are sometimes referred to in the literature as formal learning, schooling, where the intent is to learn content. So somebody wants you to learn how to read, so it's about the content. Non-formal learning, which is about your passion, your love, finding something you're excited about, and that's about the youth's interests. And most youth programs are oriented in that way. They're what would be called youth-centric. They're focused on what's the youth interested in and how do we help them grow in that area. And then the work of parents is often, and neighbors and others, is often informal learning, where it's something we want to encourage the young person to do, but we don't sort of have a curriculum we're trying to teach. We're just trying to encourage them to learn or get excited about it. So we take them to museums and expose them to things. But those different kinds of learning are very important. And the Mott Foundation has done a report that suggests that a new day for learning in the future, in our country particularly, needs to be one that uses more of those kinds of learning and less emphasis on formal learning. Not less importance on formal learning, but less. That's the only way. I was with a group of young people, and the language that came up is essentially, remember, kids learn by doing, not just listening. And that's what a lot of youth programs are about, is giving opportunities to young people to do and develop those kind of competencies that you're talking about.
I think those youth programs really do also get at something that I think is really important. A couple weeks ago, Newsweek featured an issue on creativity in the U.S. and how the rate, there's a decline in creativity among U.S. children. People aren't thinking outside the box anymore. We're so scheduled. Everything is so regimented to figure out how we should think about things. It's harder for us to think outside that box. How do we create a new invention? How do we think about the oil spill in a different way to clean up after the oil spill? So part of the things that we should be talking about with children is allowing them to explore on their own. So we talked about at the beginning sort of safety issues and exploring the neighborhood. Parents aren't letting kids go outside. It's too dangerous. You can't go outside. You can't take your bicycle down the street. You can't do that. But how much did you learn on the way back? You know, walking home from school every day, kicking the can. You know, having that time on your own to sort of self-explore what it is that, you know.
When you immerse yourself in the world around you, then you end up knowing more about it. And it's just when you're exposed to these opportunities, then again, learn by doing rather than just seeing. When you're actually doing these extracurriculars, seeing, oh, what does it take to be a pro football player? Well, you're experienced and you're shown it, and you can actually get a better idea of what it's like.
Yep. Heather, I want to pick up on what you said too about that article. There was another study, they took these neuroscientists kind of off the grid and they couldn't use their blackberries and floated them down a river, I think near the Four Corners of the United States. And they talked about, they really think there is room for additional study for what happens to your brain when you're kind of unplugged. And like you say, that room that gets filled when you just have to kind of, your brain just noodles around because you're bored or you don't have anything else to fill it with, and you solve problems that you might not otherwise. And that's not something you can schedule. You can't say, I'm going to spend 10 minutes being creative. You just have to let it happen.
One of the problems, though, in society today is that, in an ideal sense, I would agree with you, but what happens when we get downtime? We watch TV disproportionately. So it's not as if our overscheduling is taking away our ability to have the downtime. It's that when we get time, we use it often poorly, if you will. And so the notion that opportunities, youth programs and stuff, which are often designed to stimulate creativity, to get you to think differently, to get you to speak up and learn for your own voice and things, is somehow guilty of hurting creativity. Certainly some programs can. Poor quality programs can hurt kids. One of the real things we're learning from research is that bad programs are actually bad for kids, not just bad programs in general. But the notion that they need the time, I agree with, but the problem is our society pushes them to have so many options outside of things that are constructive, developmentally or creativity-wise, that it's, we almost have to structure in opportunities that are of the wide variety of creativity that young people need, and do it wisely. I mean, you can't overdo it. I don't want to stress that. But the notion that if left alone, kids will discover and do all these things is both partly correct and partly incorrect in our society when there's so many other things they'll get caught up in that aren't necessarily. And I don't mean safety issues, because I couldn't agree with more of you. Our safety issues are way overblown. We have driven our kids to be fearful of, and our parents to be fearful of, a whole bunch of things that is just totally out of proportion. When it happens, it is tragic. I don't mean to minimize it, but to walk around your life fearing that your child's going to be abducted is an irrational fear in 99% of the places in this country, and yet we still suffer from that.
Absolutely.
I think we, to follow that, we need strong parenting also. There's a lot of bad programming. There are activities that aren't beneficial. We have free time and we spend all of it in front of a TV, for example. Parents, they need to be strong and be boundaried. And I think sometimes as parents we fear standing up to our children. They're going to reject us, and the learning of disappointment, the acceptance of disappointment is very important.
And
as part of this process.
You touched on watching TV in your free time and whatnot, and that kind of another place where parenting can come in. When I was a little kid, I loved Legos, and I was always playing with Legos. Well, there's an opportunity of a good way to express creativity without involving yourself in a planned, structured extracurricular. You're just on your own, being creative, playing with Legos, and if parents could try and persuade the kids to do that more rather than watch TV, then that'd be a good.
That's part of what informal learning, people who support informal learning do, is they set up an environment where the Legos are there, or the blocks, or the outdoors and the swing sets, or the a chance to walk to the park, or things are there, and young people can take advantage of them, and they're not just by default sitting on the couch and watching TV or whatever. So it's, learning is most often proactively structured, either around the content if it's formal learning, around the young person if it's non-formal learning, or around informal opportunities that people are arranging around you in some sense to help you learn and benefit from it.
I think some of that goes back to what Dan was talking about as far as leisure activities. I don't think enough adults know what to do with their downtime. And one of the things they could do with their downtime is play with their kids. Go outside and go for a walk. Go explore that trail. One of the things that I do at MSU, I teach a class on the benefits of play in childhood, and the culmination of the class is a community play day where we invite parents and young children to come and just play, and my students come up with different activities, homegrown activities, low cost, no cost activities, things that parents don't have to spend an arm and a leg. Somebody came up with a a mini golf course where you just use household items to create a mini golf course. I mean, those things are going to mean so much more to your child rather than you sent them to a summer camp across, you know.
It's easier to drive the bus, I
Yeah.
think, as a parent than it is to engage with the child. I don't know how to play with this child, but I can take them to the activity where they know how to play. And I think that so often we relent to driving that bus.
Well, and it's interesting because part of what I find as a parent, and I don't know if anyone here has kids similar to mine are 13, 11, 8, is that a lot of the things that they're involved in add to our busyness because they require more participation outside of that time. So piano lessons, half hour, clarinet, half hour day, you know, each of those. And then school, which is, you know, everyday math. Now you have to do homework with your child every day. It's supposed to be a parent-child activity to bring the family together, but now I'm with my 3 separate children at 3 separate times for 3 half hours. That's an hour and a half sucked out of our family life. Make kids read. You know, that whole movement, but it's like, okay, do I make them read or do I let them play Legos? You know, what's the value? But there's a lot of those things that are now requiring time outside of just the activity. It's not the 4 hours of extra activities my kids do, it's the practicing their choir and practicing their music. And that takes up other time that I don't know what to do, you know, then I have time for that kid while this one's practicing.
And you have a special needs
Yeah.
child on top of it.
We've talked quite a bit about the advantages for these scheduled activities, leadership developments, different skill development. Are there any negatives? Are there any downsides to having an active child or children in your family's life?
Well, I might have said this in a different way before, but when the activities are all out there, and kind of one motto my wife and I have are families that play together, stay together. And so having older children, 21 and 18, I mean, they come back, when they come back home, we play. So we play games, outside games or table games or something like that, card games, and I think it's a fun kind of like leisure skills kind of thing. It's not really meant to accomplish anything, but I think it's brings that family togetherness periodically, and we talk while we play, and so those, I think that's way different than, you know, you're signed up for a league and you're going to go off and do some competitive league kind of thing. I mean, there's a place for that too, but to have balance.
Balance is an issue. I also think that many parents, they vicariously feel significant with the success of their children. And as we were saying earlier, maybe 6% of the kids that we already are talking about are overscheduled. Sometimes those are the 6% that are pushed by parents, and the parents feel value because their child succeeded where they didn't. Or I'm a success and I want my child to be as successful. I did it, so now you can do it. And I think that's very detrimental to kids. I think given choices kids will make, given the choice of TV and Legos, I think that many kids are going to choose the Legos.
Tomorrow you're going to ask about our Legos.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been a question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly, I'm tested when I'm during swim season and school's going on during the winter. It really becomes a test for me to be able to prioritize. It's hard to stay on top of swimming, church, music, and school all at the same time. And if you're not good at organizing yourself, prioritizing, it certainly can have negative implications to overscheduling.
Do you give yourself permission to not be perfect at each one of those many activities that you're
Yeah,
involved in?
yeah, I do. Sometimes I push the schoolwork aside and either have some leisure time for myself, or I go to the swim meet and hang out with the friends. And it is very tough, and it's a life skill that you will learn if you're able to perfect the ability to prioritize and see what needs to be done first.
Have you had to give anything up to do one thing versus another?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I had an opportunity to go to the Big 9 swim meet last year, but All-State Band, their winter camp was the same weekend, so I had to make a big decision. Well, do I go to the regional swimming event, or should I go to the All-State Band concert that is so important? So I ended up choosing to do the band thing, but it was a tough decision to make, and it happens sometimes.
But a good life set of choices.
Yeah.
Lessons.
Yeah.
Great lesson.
I mean, another aspect of the negative, lost time in family meals. If there's one thing our audience ought to understand, is that there's increasing research about the importance of eating meals together, particularly dinner, because it's a time of conversation. And you can do that in restaurants, but you've got to be conscious about doing it. And to the extent that we get so busy that we don't sit down together, or we sit down at different times, all of that becomes problematic. The other sort of thing is that parents tend to start deferring to others as experts and not trusting their own judgment. We've come to the point in society where we have experts on everything. So all of us are experts in different areas, and people might come to us and ask for expertise. But parents need to start having confidence in themselves and their ability to make decisions on these things, because ultimately their confidence in the way they make decisions and the way they talk to their young people about decisions they have to make is a big factor about whether it's going to work or not. Whether it's right or wrong, in some experts' opinion, may not be nearly as important as whether or not it's executed well in terms of the way it's talked about, discussed, and done. The other thing is that we are learning again that poor quality programs can be problematic. So if you're young people, the general rule is young people, particularly after about 8 or 9, start voting with their feet. If they don't want to be there, there's probably it's as likely there's two things happening. Either the program's not really very good, or it's really just not their interest. And recognizing that and moving on. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have some encouragement to stay with things for a while, for a reasonable period of time. But knowing that negative thing. We tend to think about negative peer support, negative peer thing. Bad programs tend to reinforce negative peer influence. Non-programs tend to allow young people to be subject to negative peer influence, and it tends to be very problematic for many young people. Whereas most youth program staff are good at managing caring relationships between young people and reducing the amount of bullying and other kinds of behavior that are all too common today.
Excellent points that we'll cover in our third segment. And so it does seem like there are positive and negative consequences of the many activities our young people are involved in. What can we as parents and youth activities coordinators do to help young people find the right balance? Let's take a look.
But I want to. It's the lament of many young people when offered the chance to engage in something new and exciting. As parents, we often need to bring a dose of reality to how much we can successfully manage. Time management strategies and engaging in activities that maintain family closeness or reflect family values are a few approaches to deciding how much and in which activities to engage. Do others also have a responsibility to help young people balance their lives?
All right, well, balance is something we've heard you guys talk about already. How can we help our young people find that balance, and what kind of advice are you looking for, Alex?
Well, I think that, again, just trying to be well-rounded and putting the academics first, and then the extracurriculars, involving yourself with not just sports or not just arts, getting a dose of all of them so you can see what you want to do in the future. And finding the right amount is what's crucial. Is you don't want to overtask yourself with all of them so that you can't be successful in any of them. Because if you are doing too many things, you're not going to be successful in them. So it's finding that good amount of balance.
I think exposure is really important, whether it's formal, informal, whether it's done in an organized activity or within the family. But exposure to different activities, to music, to art, to sports activities, but also that in certain situations, I think accepting mediocrity is okay. You don't have to be the best. I play harmonica a little bit. If I had to be proficient at it, I wouldn't play it. It's those types of things, and it's fun to be able to have kids enjoy certain things, have exposure, and maybe when they're older, when they're retirement age, they can pick it up and go with it. But that exposure, I think, is important.
And how we measure success too, Alex, and success. So along with that, right, so is it the journey or is it the product, right? What are we learning through these activities? Are we learning about all these informal educational benefits to these activities, or is it something that, no, I have to be the best at all of these different things? And that definitely is personality making. It makes you who you are developmentally from birth to however. So.
Well, and I think modeling is really important for us as parents, and often as educators also, that, you know, modeling to students and to our own children how to have leisure time, how to value relationships, how to treat someone respectfully, and how to say no. I think sometimes as adults we have that problem. So kids, oh yeah, I can join your baseball team. You need another player. Mom, I joined someone's baseball team today. You know, those kinds of things. I think modeling is a key piece. So one of the things in the last segment that hit me is that, you know, we don't spend the kind of time with extended family that we did when I was growing up. And valuing our family is really important in order to get our children to. They need to see us valuing our family in order to value their family of origin.
And that saying no thing is definitely very big, because I've had times where church has called me, oh, we need you to play this Sunday really badly because we can't find anyone, but I'm busy that Sunday, and it's hard to say that to a church. And when you're being bombarded with all these Facebook event invites, oh, you come to this event here and here for this club. Well, I mean, Facebook, you can always just ignore it, but that's kind of, it's the principle of the thing. It's where people are asking you to do things, and even if you can do it, if you don't get that crucial amount of free time for yourself, then you're going to be hurting in the end.
Yeah, I mean, at some level, you think about it developmentally across ages. At the younger ages, the issue of care and safety are predominant, and stimulating environment, things that help you young people learn and things. Engagement is important across the whole age span. So from an infant being engaged in what they're doing to a teenager being engaged, they're very different in nature, but engagement is very important. In the elementary and middle school years, the issue of exploration and trying things out, not getting so, I think, competitive sports that are highly competitive shouldn't probably start before age 12. Is what the literature is starting to show, that you don't need to get that specialized before that. And in fact, efforts to get that specialized before that are probably doing physical damage to the athletes in some way. When you get to the older ages, the issue is increasingly choice. What do they want to do? And having a choice about that, and making choices between things, and voice in those things, being able to talk and decide what they're, how being represented and being able to go this way rather than that way in the activity, or take it this way and do something else. Those are the kind of things that change developmentally over time that are important. Something we haven't talked about here, but I think is very important, and we've talked about sort of the fact that communities are different, but we haven't talked about the community role in all of this. We talk about the parent role, which I think is very, very important, but we also need to be thinking more about the role of the community. What I mean by that is policies at a community level, coordination at a community. Providence, Rhode Island, for example, took all of its after-school programs for middle school kids, divided them into zones around the city, and then said, okay, we're going to get everybody on a common schedule, so that if you want to do activity A and activity B, you don't have to worry, because activity A starts and goes 15 minutes over and you can't do activity B. They're on the same schedule, so you can go between them and you get a choice. And then every semester they also poll the kids about what else they want, and then they create the things the kids want. So you get a more organized, community-based approach to these kind of opportunities. The same thing can happen in athletics, where you can have coaches or parents out of control, and in some places they've actually, North Dakota's got a good program, I believe it's North Dakota, maybe South Dakota, where they actually get together and you start setting norms and expectations of what the behavior is that's expected for young people and parents at games. And you can't just say, you got to be there or you don't practice, and you can't make all these rules up that coaches or others who are pushing the limits want to make up. The parents have a voice in these things and can act collectively. We don't tend to have enough of that. We tend to be sort of in a deferral mode to whatever the demands are of programs in a way that's not necessarily healthy if the program's demands aren't healthy.
Yeah, in my experiences, I've been in swimming, and usually we had vocal jazz practice on Monday nights. And my experiences have been good with the coaches and getting along with all of that, but there is sometimes conflict between the sports coaches frowning upon involvement in music, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
So.
And you sit, or well, in swimming it's not sit on the bench, but
yeah.
but you might not swim an event, or you might get benched in hockey if you don't make all those practices and can't meet all those things. Let's talk briefly about age appropriateness. And you mentioned this a little bit too, that age 12, boy, if kids were in competitive sports by age 12, I think most communities around here would have a heart attack. Because they do start at 4 and go up. What is really an appropriate guideline for parents to really think about when their little kids start saying, oh, and my daughter, oh, I love to dance. I'd love to take dance lessons. You know, she's 4. When do we start letting them do those things?
Take advantage of their interest when it occurs. So if they want to start early, start them in the right kind of thing. Don't start them in a highly competitive dance.
That's what I was just thinking.
Thing. But give them a chance to explore it. Generally, anyone under age 10 would be more about exploring it than perfecting it. If you're trying to perfect it before age 10, you've got to be the 1 in a million kid who's going to be, the tennis pro or whatever. And they exist.
Yes.
But they're not likely to be the typical child, and even many of those would benefit from a little less stress on those.
And those are the kids and the families that I think you are going to experience a lot of stress symptoms. You're going to have the irritable kids and the angry kids. I think conflicts within families often arise when there's expectations versus choices. I expect you to do well in swimming versus do you want to swim or do you want to be a musician? And maybe you can do both. And if you can do both and that's okay with you, fine. If I expect you to do both, that becomes problematic.
It kind of, just in a generalization, is that when is it too much? I think if it causes a lot of anxiety and stress, it's one thing to have some worry and kind of being running, but when it becomes like the pressure from parents or higher expectations, and sometimes the kids themselves will have that on themselves. So whether it's as an individual or as a family, anytime you have enough anxiety, that's going to cause some symptoms of one type or another. So I think that's different for different families. Some are very busy and it seems to be fine, and others, I think they just get overextended, whether it's financially or just their own time or feeling guilty because they can't provide their kids with as much opportunities as other families or whatever. So in my opinion, part of it is too much if it creates too much stress or anxiety.
You talked a lot about your family values revolved around playing games with your kids and playing together. What kind of advice would you give to families to help translate their family values into practical, I don't want to say rules, but how do they translate those values into what to say yes and no to? Because saying no is hard.
Okay, so as far as saying no to in terms of their activities, having some degree of limitations on what they can do?
Or identifying which value is most important. We will sit down for dinner, as Professor Blythe said. We will sit down to dinner, and anything you want to do around that is fine. Let's talk a little bit maybe how we get those family values to reflect in the schedule.
I think that sometimes, I was at a program just recently and they talked about the vision of responsibility. And the example was with food. And evening meals is so important. That the parent would decide where we're going to eat, what we're going to eat, and when we're going to eat. And the child would decide how much. And I think that sometimes in families we would say that we are going to have an evening meal, maybe 2 nights a week. As a family, we can negotiate and dialogue and communicate. When are those evening meals going to occur this week with schedules? So it's not a dictate. It's a dialogue. I think negotiation is a word I hope that parents and families can utilize a lot. We'll negotiate what's going to work this week.
Sometimes a lot of things what parents don't say speaks louder than what they do say. So like competitiveness with sports, are those things as highly valued as other activities or involvement in church-related activities, things that you don't get a blue ribbon for? A friend of mine, I went to her daughter's track and field day, and she did excellent at all the events. She's a kindergartner, but she did great, and she had all these different ribbons. And I said to her, boy, you have a lot of different colors here. This is really great. I didn't just look at the blue ribbons, but you look at all the ribbons. Did you have fun? Yeah, I had a great time. So what is it as a family you promote? Is it winning, or is it trying your hardest, sort of again, I think I said that before, but the process versus the product. A lot of those things come through what you say, but also what you do, and what you're talking about modeling too. That's huge.
Well, in asking that question, getting back to the community piece, I often tell young moms that I know who are becoming moms for the first time, look around at moms that you admire, how they do things, or families that you like the way how it handles, and have dialogue with them, and use them as your resources when you get stuck, because we all get stuck. So that's one way we can do it, and then it becomes a community. And I know, we have a neighborhood where we can send kids back and forth between houses and not worry about them, and know that the other mom is there, the other dad is there. So I think it's partially building those relationships as adults, modeling how to build that relationship, and then creating family partnerships, because we have no extended family in town.
Alex, what are some of the signs that you show that your parents know you're getting a little bit, like you said, need that break? What are some signs that parents can look for that you emit when you're overscheduled?
My mom's always asking me, well, do you have homework? Are you going to get it done? And usually she'll come down to my room, see if I'm working on my homework, and if I'm down there sleeping on my bed, then she can probably see that I'm a little stressed out. And I would say that I have pretty good communication with my parents, and if I'm stressed out, I'll let them know. It's usually something that I'll deal with on my own time, because I'm a senior now, so mom's not going to be the one that's going to be dictating if I'm swimming or if I'm not. But
and communication is so key. You guys have mentioned that time and time again, discussing it as a family. So the youth of our region are a great resource for our future, and there's so much to celebrate regarding the number of opportunities we have to offer. And as always, balance is key, and here at KSMQ we encourage our audience to be active viewers, and I encourage you to visit us on our Facebook page, and if you like, blog about this topic and share your thoughts with us tonight. I want to thank all of you again for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts. We had plenty of great discussion, and I appreciate all your time for being here. We appreciate everyone's participation. I want to thank you viewers for watching here at home. Tune in next week when Cities on the Move visits Owatonna, Minnesota. We meet psychic Therese Farr. We visit a company that makes cans, and we visit with Dr. Tapper about the potential Pillsbury campus property acquisition. That's Tuesday, September 7th at 6:30 p.m. on KSMQ. Thanks for joining us. Good night.